So I was thinking about encumbrance in role-playing games and how to best manage it, and it led me to a fundamental thought about role-playing game design that I'd like to share. That's my dog telling me someone's walking by on the road. Sorry. Anyway, I was thinking about people do it, with encumbrance slots or the old original D&D way where everything's weighed in the equivalent of gold coins for what you can carry. And every one of these is meant to enforce a restriction on the players. And the DM is responsible for making sure that that becomes a factor and that enforcement is kept up on that, so you have constraints on players, which poses challenges, which is a good idea in a game that makes players make meaningful choices. But it occurred to me as I thought about this, it assumes, if only inferentially, an adversarial situation between the player and the GM because it's a limit that's enforced by rules. And having a mechanism where you have a limit that's enforced by rules sets up a conflict that I think interferes with good role play and good results. So I'm considering putting together in the rules that I've been working on and playing at home solo for a few years now, a different way of approaching not just encumbrance, but the rule system as a whole. For encumbrance as a trivial example, rather than saying, okay, you get so many slots, excuse me, sorry about that, you get so many slots or so many gold coins in weight that you can carry and you need to track that, you do it less formally, relying on the fact that we are all cooperating together to hopefully create an immersive role-play experience. So, as an example for encumbrance, small items that you might carry, things like lockpicks, toothpick, piece of string, rolled up document. The player can equip themselves with a belt pouch. And they can put in the belt pouch whatever they think is reasonable that could be held by the belt pouch. They then would be responsible for role-playing the consequences of that. Let's say you put in, like I said, lockpicks, piece of string, a fragment of parchment that's maybe rolled up and tied, some nails or small spikes. And now they're in an emergency situation where they're trying to get out their small spikes. Well, they could roleplay the fact that that would take longer than if the pouch only held the small spikes. And they would also be responsible for deciding what reasonably could be put in that pouch. Now, there's still going to be differences of opinion that might cause an issue there, I suppose. But instead of having to sit there and count slots and worry about that, you could be thinking in terms of, well, what could I reasonably carry as an average size, average strength person and still be functional in the settings that most role-playing games take place in. You're walking through a dungeon, you're carrying a weapon, you're wearing armor, and you have a backpack on. That's going to restrict you. And that should be role-played. There should be rules mechanisms that support the role-play so the character can say, I'm going to go ahead and put my backpack on and carry, 500 gold pieces because the gold pieces in this setting are, small little discs, let's say. So I can easily fit 500 or so of those in the backpack. But when I go into combat, I'm going to be hindered by that unless I can take the backpack off, which if I'm wearing armor may or may not be more difficult depending on the armor and the backpack. But instead of having hard and fast rules, have guidelines about this that the players are responsible for maintaining. And I think that would lead to more immersive play. It would still lead to meaningful choices having to be made if it's role-played honestly. And let's face it, if you're sitting down to role-play with a group of people, especially for a protracted campaign, I guess not so much at a one-off convention game, but if you're role-playing with your group, and your players are not honest and reliable, you have other fundamental problems. And that's also going to interfere with the immersive role play. So I'm thinking, let's go with common sense guidelines rather than hard and fast rules and see where that leads. I think it might improve things. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks.